So you're seeing one screen, right? Yeah, you're seeing one screen?
Yes, only one
Hear
screen.
me? Okay, very good. Okay, we get started. Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavid Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yeah. Who wants to start?
ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुषं ददामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेक्षिणीम्
Next.
नमोऽस्तु देव्यास विशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दाय तपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रतीभः
प्रपन्नपारिजाताय तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः।
वसुदेवसुतं देवं तं च शानूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम् सर्वधर्मान् प्रतित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वा सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुच।
So we are on the 13th chapter where we are getting into really the fundamentals of Vedanta, which, as we talked about last time, is really the core teachings of Bhagavad Gita. As much as Karmani Vadikaraste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana is, one of the most popular shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, which reminds us what really how our actions should be tailored to our dharma. And but then, as we see in the 13th chapter, it is really all about the essence of the Jiva Brahma Aikya. We talked about the aspects of Jiva in the first 6 chapters, and then we talked about Jagat, and we talked about even the Paravidya and Aparavidya in the 7th chapter, which really starts to talk about that aspect of Brahman. So the oneness between Jivatma and Paramatma, and that is really the highest teaching of the Vedas, of the Vedanta of Upanishad. And this is really the highest teaching which we're getting into the 13th chapter. So in terms of reflection, we started discussing about Kshetra and Kshetrajna, which is really so important in all the scriptural texts, because Kshetra really includes the entire material universe. This material universe, which we are so familiar with, which appears so exciting, which appears glamorous, and sometimes, of course, does not appear that glamorous. So that is what Kshetra is all about. And Kshetrajna is the consciousness principle. So the whole creation is really nothing but this mixture of this consciousness, or sometimes we refer to it as a spirit, and this whole material universe, which we refer to sometimes as the matter. So this matter principle is inert, it doesn't have any life, and the consciousness principle is really full of life. So if we have really understood what this matter is, and if we have really, really understood this consciousness principle, then we have really understood the whole creation. In fact, in the last, I guess, 20 years, I would say, or even more, we talk about this theory of everything, right? TOE. I don't know how many of you have come across the term. For me, I came across this term only recently in the last, I would say, 2 years. This theory of everything, um, which, according to science, explains the theory of really the theory of everything, which explains the phenomena of all this creation. But Vedanta has given the theory of everything from including the consciousness principle. So Krishna says, therefore, that our rishis, as much as the scientists have given the theory of everything, our rishis have actually already talked about the composition of kshetra, and they have also, of course, included kshetragni, without which, of course, there is no knowledge itself, the theory of everything, which is this knowledge. And this one, not only have they explained this theory of everything, but they've also explained in all its diversity. And that is what in Shloka 5 we had talked about is Vividaihi Chandobihi. In all the Vedic mantras, it has been dealt with, and in Pritak, in variety of ways. That is how this entire material universe has been already described. So that is what we discuss as the Kshetra and the Kshetragnya. But the 13th chapter also points out to another principle, which is actually the Purusha and Prakriti, which is the other two terms which we came across. And this is what in Shlokas 6 and 7, which we'll be going with in quite in detail today. So here it's actually Purusha, we may say, is the consciousness, and Prakriti, which is the matter. Uh, so Purusha, you can say, is aligned with Kshetragnya, and Prakriti, which is this Kshetra or principle here. So in both of them, or you can even look at it as a subject-object relationship. So this entire world is nothing but this relationship between Kshetra, Kshetragnya, or Purusha, Kshetragnya, and the Prakriti. Or if you want to look at it as subject, object, then it is the relationship between the object, which is actually seen in front of us, object that we experience, and Purusha, which is really the essence of everything which is out there. So we can look at it that way too. This word Purusha and Prakriti is mostly in the Sankhya philosophy. And here, this Sankhya philosophy is where, in 6 and 7, you see where this kshetra is broken down into a lot of the 24 tattvas. So this part of it we will be discussing today quite a bit. So um, any questions on how Purusha and Kshetragnya is aligned, and Prakriti and matter is aligned? So think about it, like I said, Kshetra as the Prakriti, and Prakriti is what, we'll be discussing about how it is broken down into the 24 tattvas. And the Purusha is the, if you wish, I mean, we don't use the word soul in Hinduism so much, but you can think about Purusha as a soul. And essentially you have, the consciousness principle in the which we also refer to as God. And this is that Purusha is the knower or Kshetragnya. It is the subject. and the kshetra is the object or the field, and the field is really where the whole consciousness operates. And without this field, one would never really know that there is something called consciousness. So the whole kshetra is this field of operation, and the operator, if you want to think about of this field, that operator is the uh, knower of the field, or kshetrajna, or the purusha. So I just wanted to give that little bit of reflection as we move on to understanding more about the sixth and seventh shlokas. Anything more to add? Okay. So definition of the terms. So with this background, I just wanted to give you, we went through the verse 1. Prakritim purusham cha eva kshetram kshetrajnam mevacha etad yo veti bichami jnanam jneyam cha keshava. Okay. And then Krishna starts to explain. So this shloka, as we explained earlier, it is not there in the Bhagavad Gita. It has been added on later by Madhusudan Saraswati. And so Krishna then starts to explain the definitions of kshetra, kshetrajna. So idam, starting with the body itself. Here, of course, shariram, he doesn't refer to just the physical or the gross body, but he also refers to the subtle body, or the antakarna. And not only just the antakarna, but also all the five senses, the pranas, all this is included in this upadhi, which we call as the shariram. And then in shloka number 3, we have kshetrajnam cha api mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetrajnam. So in shloka number 2, he talks about what kshetra is. And then in verse number 3, he starts to explain how this kshetram is not limited to just the one individual physical body, but it is sarva kshetreshu. So the kshetra, or the field, or the prakriti, as we said, includes all the every object that is out there. And kshetra kshetrajnayor jnanam yatta jnanam matam mama. So this knowledge of both of them is actually necessary, because without it, the entire theory of everything, which is TOE, is not really complete. So then in shloka number 4, he's saying that, he's breaking up what that kshetram is all about, and indicating that, he's kind of laying the kind of a prelude to what is to come, to say that kshetram includes all the modifications, and that he says in very brief what he's trying to say out here, which is tat kshetram, then yadrik, yat vikariyata. So what the modifications of that field, and what is its origin, and that jnani who knows not just the field alone, but is also aware of the powers of the kshetrajna. Yat prabhavaha kshetrajna, and how is both of them related? The union with the consciousness and the matter, both of them, is what he's trying to show here. So then in shloka number 5, he actually starts to glorify, because he talks about, the scientists before, which is the rishis. And he says that this was already revealed by the rishis in various ways. And this is Chandobhi Vividai Pratak, in the various distinctive Vedic chants here. And which includes, really, I mean, this is not as if it has just been said, but actually there's a lot of reasoning and uh, decisiveness which goes into description of each one of these natures. So this, they talk about the various lokas, for example, and all the sciences that we know of today, which is when we talk about today about chemistry or biochemistry or any of the economics and microeconomics and possibly even bioeconomics, I don't think there's a terminology like that, but I'm just saying that think about everything. This was already discussed before in many different ways. So, having said this, now we come to what really are the various divisions of the kshetra and what is the nature of it. So, tat kshetram yat, what is that field, is what we are coming to here. And so, here you can see I've given this really exhaustive table, which I took from Swami Guru Bhaktananda's works on this thing, what he's written beautifully, which is actually available in our chinfo.org also. So here you can see chapter 13 in shloka number 6, and we will, of course, come to the actual shloka itself. This entire thing he's breaking up into the antakarana, which is the inner equipment, which, here I've explained here, which is ahankaraha, buddhi, manas, and chitta. Then the pranas, the five sense organs, the five senses, not organs, the five senses, okay, which is prana, apana, vyana, samana, udana. And these are, of course, the five, when we say pranayama, sorry, when we say pranayama, it actually, pranayama might mean just the breath control, but the entire pranas includes all these five energies or five processes, if you will, which are going on in the body all the time. Then we have the jnanendriyas, which is again the five knowledge aspects, which includes, the ears, the skin, shrotra, tvak, chakshuhu, jihva, and grana. You have the ears, skin, eyes, tongue, nose. And then we have the karmendriyas, which are the organs of action. Vak, pani, pada, payu, upasta. By the way, all these are there in the text called Tattva Bodha. Tattva Bodha is the initial text which talks about the, the basics of Vedanta. So we have the speech, the hands, the feet, the anus, the genitals, the organs of action. And then breaking that into going further deeper into from where have they all come from, which is the tanmatras, the subtle elements, which are the akasha, vayu, agni, apaha, prithvi, space, air, fire, water, and earth. So this is really a beautiful table, which I really wanted to bring it to you because you can see the Sanskrit equivalents of each one of the organs. So these are really the 24 tattvas, which is elaborated in the Sankhya philosophy. Okay, so this whole thing comes under the aspect of kshetra or the field. And now we have the kshetrajna or the knower of the field, which is, which will be elaborated in the shloka number 7. And some parts is mentioned here. And then, of course, from here on, once we do up till here, then later, Lord Krishna talks about the qualities that is required for us in order for us to really make this shift in our mental understanding from how we function today, where we look at ourselves, which is our physical body, as the entire self, right? Kshetra. But here he then goes on to explain about the qualities that is required in order for us to clearly understand that it's the composition of kshetra and kshetrajna, which is really the total everything, I would say, TOE, what I said. So the nature of kshetra, which is the entire body conglomerate, if you will, which is explained here. And then these are all the qualities which will come up in shloka number 7. And its relation to chapter number 7, where in shlokas 6, 7, and 8, there was a brief, reference to it. I actually have, I think, shloka number 4, which I brought it up here today in my presentation so that you can have an idea. And so here we have, which is included in this subtle element. So all out here, you can see this whole thing is explained. He really elaborates the tattvas. So tattva means a category, and so there are 24 categories which Sankhya philosophy is divided this into. And of course, there are other philosophies which go into smaller groupings like the Nyaya philosophy, the Vaisheshika philosophy. They break it out into smaller, but Sankhya philosophy is the one which has brought this elaboration up to 24 tattvas. So we'll come to this table again, but I just want to then go into the shloka here. Mahabhutanyahankaraha buddhiravyaktamev cha Indriyani dashai ekam cha pancha indriya gocharaha. So this is, we'll come back to the table. So Mahabhutani, of all the 5 elements. So here are the 5 elements, okay? Akasha, Vayuhu, Agni, Apaha, and Prithvi. Space, air, fire, water, earth. So that's the Mahabhutani. Then Ahankaraha, Buddhihi, Avyaktam, Evacha. So we'll see how this unmanifest aspect comes about. But here we have explained, which is this here, Ahankaraha, Buddhihi, Manaha, and Evacha. That refers to, the rest of them, which is Evacha, memory, etc. Indriyani, Dasha Ekam, the 10 senses, and the 5 gross elements. So this is the kshetra. So here you have the 10 elements, which is, so here, where he says Dasha Ekam, the 10 senses. When he says the 10 senses, he's referring to the Jnana Indriyas and the Karmendriyas here. And the mind, and the 5 gross elements. So these are what he's referring to as. So these are the 8 principles of the lower Prakriti, which is given in shloka number 4, which is shown here. So this is from chapter 7. Bhumi rapo nalo vayuhu kam mano buddhi revacha ahankara iti yam me bhinna prakriti ashtadha. So here are the 5 elements, and this is divided into the 8-fold. So basically, this is what is referring to this chart here, and what we are seeing as the kshetra. Any questions? So
thanks for explaining in detail. Yeah.
You're welcome, Anant. So we have the 5 subtle elements, and then we have the Jnanendriyas, the Karmendriyas, and the Sukshma Buddhi, which is the 15, and then the mind. So the third stage, 16, we have the Prakriti Mahat and the Ahankara. And then in the 4th stage, from the subtle elements, you will see how the gross elements comes about. So that part of it we will see out here.
Hari Om. So the
Yes,
subtle
yes,
elements, we have 5 temples, right? For the subtle elements in India.
The 5 tanmatras, yeah.
The subtle, yes, we have 5 temples, correct?
5
temples, yeah. For space, air, fire, water, and earth.
Oh, yeah, yes. In Tamil Nadu,
Panchabhuta Sthalam, yeah.
Correct, Panchabhuta Sthalam, yes.
Yeah. That's what it is, right? Yeah.
Yes. So each of the Panchabhuta, like Tiruvannamalai, and then Chidambaram, and
Kalahasti,
Kalahasti,
and Kanchipuram.
Correct. So they all represent the temples of the of the subtle elements, correct?
Subtle elements, okay.
Yes. So now, So before we look into this 24, the breakdown of that kshetra into 24, we have to really understand how this cosmic hierarchy is. So the cosmic hierarchy is, uh, it's like, if I have to explain where did this cup come from, I would say that, well, this cup is made of, maybe part of it is plastic, part of it is, uh, the elements from the prakriti, the space, air, etc., or whatever. So where did that come from? So I would break this plastic down into, say, for example, if this was made, let's say from, it's not made of polyurethane or polycarbonate or polyethylene or whatever. I'm just using my chemistry terminologies here. I would say this big polymer actually came from the smaller monomers, the monomers, whatever we have, like, smaller 4 carbon chains or whatever. Now, from this, it broke down into, it came from something even more subtler, or, single elements or whatever. From where did that come from? So there is, from a cosmic hierarchy perspective, one would say that, there has to be, for every effect, there has to be a cause. But then at some point in time, there is nothing beyond the cause, correct? And on the same lines, as you break it down further, there has to be some part where beyond this, it cannot be converted into something else anymore. So there's some kind of a cosmic hierarchy, or you can say a line of authority. For example, I mean, if in a company, I mean, you can go all the way up to CEO or something, and then all the CEOs put together, then there's one big CEO. I mean, if I take a company like Reliance or whatever, all these division heads becomes one head, and finally, ultimately, there is the president, right? So something like that, you can think about in this hierarchy of all these elements. Okay, so this is what you can think about here. For example, uh, we have, let's say, if you want to break into this hierarchy, at one point there was something called, some just plain matter or something like that, and at some point, that is what, so there can be only one A, one which was from A. Then what happened is, there was this aspect of, there was a disturbance in the equilibrium of that matter, and that became the formation of one. So this is putting it in very, very simple terms. If we have to go into more detail, that will be a separate lecture we can get into at some point. But to give you an understanding, there has to be something called as something which was not there, which then became some kind of an equilibrium to an unmanifest form, from which you can see that, for example, this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way up to 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it becomes the subtle elements. So from something, you have its of a breakdown into 5 subtle elements, which in Tattva Bodh, it beautifully starts from where does it start? So, uh, ultimately, if you see, there is this earth, before earth, there's water, and before water, there is fire, and before fire, there is air, and before air, it's space. So from space, you have the formation of the air, and from air, you have the fire, and from fire you have water, and then finally the earth. So those 5 subtle elements, and this from something which is unmanifest, you get into the manifest itself, which is subtle elements. And from here, you have the subtle aspects, the subtle elements, they combine actually. Again, in Tattva Bodh, if, like I said, at some point, if you have to get into, we can go into the Tattva Bodh elements, Tattva Bodh basics or fundamentals, where it breaks down into the subtle body. the subtle body or the subtle elements, which is the aspect of ahankara, the manas, buddhi, all this, and the uh, pancha indriya, so the senses. So all these are the subtle elements, and from here, ultimately, there is a process called panchikarna, and through this process of panchikarna, you actually have this elements, the hard elements, which we finally are able to feel, and the material aspects. So the hard gross elements is the ultimate one. So this is the gross elements, and the gross elements actually then combines to form the gross body in the sense objects. So this is the entire, like if you look at it as a cause and the effect. So once you have this gross body, right, that is it. The gross body then, is how um, we are perceived in the world and everything. So it has started all the way from something which was not even unmanifest, okay, something which we cannot even perceive, to very subtle elements, and how the subtle elements have then combined and broken down, and how the whole thing, as I said, the panchikarana process of the gross elements which happens to finally the one which is an effect. So each and everything is a cause-effect relationships. There is an ultimate cause, and from that ultimate cause, there is this ultimate effect, which is this gross body. And this is the aspect which, again, you can see in Sanskrit terms, it is mentioned here. There is something called the Mahat or the Hiranyagarbha. From this Hiranyagarbha, you have this Tanmatras or the very subtle elements. So all the space, earth, etc., even though you can now feel it in the form of gross, you can feel it, but it actually has come from a subtle aspect of it. The subtle aspect of space, air, fire, water, and earth are called as tanmatras. And those subtle aspects are the ones which actually becomes a subtle body, ahankara, buddhi, indriyani, manas, all these are subtle bodies, which, if we didn't have the Shastras, we would never understand that there is something like this. Otherwise, if we have to go only by science, science will never be able to understand, will never be able to get to analyze it to this level of ankara, buddhi, indriyani, manas. But it's only at the level of stula sharira, the gross body, and the stula bhutani, the tanmatras are the ones which, becomes the stula bhutani, the five subtle elements of the space, air, fire, water, earth, are the ones which becomes the gross stula, which finally combines to form the stula sharira. So these are just the Sanskrit terminologies for the same things, which I really found this so beautifully to understand. So I have borrowed this from Swami Guru Bhaktananda's book, and have used it here to explain this, what we are trying to understand in here, which is what is the kshetra, mahabhutani ahankara, buddhi ravyaktame indriyani dashai ekam cha pancha indriya gocharaha.
I have a question. Yeah.
Yes, yes, Geeta.
See, the unmanifest, I understand that Panchabhutas, that's okay. From there to gross elements, because of combination of all this, the gross elements can be formed. But the subtle body, egoism, intellect, sense,
Correct.
that is no product. It is no product.
That is
Then
correct.
how do we say it is come from Panchabhutas?
Correct. So very, very good question, because up to the element of this gross elements and the gross body, this is the only aspect that we are able to perceive, correct? And we think that seeing is believing. Whatever we are able to see, we have faith in it and we believe it, and we can take it from here. Beyond this aspect of all this, for that, um, our buddhi has to get to a very, very subtle level. Only when my intellect and mind becomes very subtle, will I be able to understand this aspect that yes, from this gross elements of space, fire, etc., should have had a subtle aspect of it. So today, to some extent, at least one thing we can understand, that we know we have the mind, correct?
Mhm.
But is there any physical proof of the fact that there is a mind?
No.
There is absolutely no physical proof. But we are, through our shastras and everything, we're able to understand that there is a mind.
Right.
Now, when we talk about the senses, we are not talking about the physical eyes, physical ears, physical everything. There is a subtle aspect of it, which we know also exists, because we know that if I lose an eye and I take, a sheep's eye or something and put it on my thing, I will be able to see it, because that is triggered or fired by the subtle aspect of the mind.
Correct.
Okay.
That
So the
aspect
point,
of mind, is that
yeah,
such
it is.
aspect of mind?
So later in Tattva Bodh, for example, it will show about how the mind directs the senses.
Mhm.
Okay, the mind directs the senses. It's the mind which is, and even in Bhagavad Gita itself, in chapter Indriyani Mano Buddhihi, that shlokas and all talks about how the five horses are pulled by the mind. That's what I'm bringing that analogy.
Okay.
And these four aspects we can understand, right? We know we have the I factor. We know we have the buddhi, all this. But we cannot prove it. I mean, we cannot prove it through any microscope or anything like that.
Right.
Okay.
So that's why we say mind is there. Mind is
there, our
the one
intellect is working.
which controls.
Correct.
So
Correct.
is that the reason why you grouped under this equilibrium begins? It's always unstable. Is that why you grouped it under that?
Under unstable?
The disequilibrium, under that you've made all this
No.
subtle.
So this is only to show you the cause and the effect. So if you look at the first small table which I have here, right? You have let's work through backwards, okay? Where it says the chain items and the item types. Okay, you have A, B, and C. So C has actually been formed from the previous causes, which is this B's, okay? And the B itself came from A. So this shows the cause-effect relationship. So A, B, and C, and that is what in the bottom table, which shows the cause and effect chain. So ultimately, there was, if I go into all the pralayas and everything, how everything goes back to pralaya, that pralaya aspect is this unmanifest, okay? Where did that, it goes back into an unmanifest form during during the pralaya or the deluge, we say, or a simple example, let's take a simple example is when I go to sleep, okay? What is happening? Everything, the entire aspect of me as Sunitha, as a physical body, me as a subtle body, all this goes into a kind of an sleep state. From the sleep, when I get up, I wake up, there is an active state, right? So I go into an unmanifest form. So this kind of pralaya happens, during sleep. It happens during the actual pralaya, which is, when the entire universe goes into a kind of a sleep state. So that is what is referred to as the unmanifest. So where did the pralaya itself come from? It came from a disturbance in that consciousness. Okay. So A represents actually, if you think about it, came from that ultimate consciousness which because of some inequilibrium, it goes into a state of unmanifest. And from the unmanifest, all these tanmatras or the subtle aspects of the five elements have come about, which then undergoes, which actually the subtle body, again, I have to bring in Tattva Bodh. Maybe I'll try to find some of the slides which we have discussed 4 years ago, Geeta, I don't know if you remember, but I think it was Drig Drisha Vivek or one of those lectures where I had put together a couple of slides to show how this whole process happens. And the subtle body actually is where the sattva, rajas, tamas aspects of the subtle elements comes in, where we find that the sattva aspect of it in its undivided state actually becomes all the antakarnas, whereas the rajas aspect of the subtle elements actually becomes the organs of action, all that, because there's an activity associated with that. And then finally you have the tamas aspect of it, which then undergoes this aspect of panchikarna. There is a combination. If you remember that whole cycle of, you divide into four, and each one of those elements then combine together, and then ultimately through a process of panchikarna, it becomes this gross body, which is a Sthula Sharira. So it's extremely scientific, the way the rishis have already conceived of all this only by using their own uh, um, only their subtle intellect. So, to Geeta's first question, how do we really know these things are really there? You know, it can happen only when our mind becomes highly subtle enough to be able to ponder upon this aspect of, which is where today, when we talk about artificial intelligence and real intelligence, we are using so little aspect of truly what we are capable of in terms of this intelligence. If we make our minds so subtle enough, we have access to a much large uh, sphere of intelligence where we can really look into all this. And that is this aspect which our rishis have come out with, you know. So I mean, I didn't have to go into so much of detail here, but I wanted to give that idea because if we just say this five elements and this we leave it, it won't give you a full appreciation, you know.
Wonderful. Thank you for the explanation. It really helps. Mhm.
So then in shloka number 7, um, he talks about a little more of the of that kshetra. Okay. So far we saw only about 24 elements which came, which was discussed in shloka number 6. But here he says, this kshetra or this body, a conglomerate which we saw in that table, there are 6 qualities of this body, okay, which is shown in this shloka, which is shloka number 7, and which is ichha dvesha. Okay, so these are aspects again. Geeta, I'm sure we are now relieved. Oh my God, finally bring us back down to earth and really let us understand, what we go through in this life, what this body goes through with the mind and the intellect and the ego and everything. What are the things it goes through? It goes through ichha, it goes through dvesha, it goes through sukham, it goes through dukkham in this sanghataha. That's why he's saying ichha, dvesha, sukham, dukkham, sanghataha, chetana, dhritihi. Okay? Sentiency. We know that this is being powered by something. It's like a car. Since you're living in Detroit, the car city, you can, as much as you can say that, I'm building millions of these vehicles, all these millions of vehicles are of no use if you don't have a fuel which is driving it. Now, most people will be happy if we just stop with that. Okay, I understand the car is being driven by the fuel, but then who is making the fuel power all those complex mechanisms, right? So that's where the kshetrajna comes into aspect here. Okay, so sentiency is, you can say, one aspect of one which is giving the uh, processes. Like in our body, for example, the one that gives you that sentiency aspect of it is the, but here, we are saying Chetana as the awareness. It goes even beyond the level of just the pranamaya kosha, which is a prana, apana, vyana, udana. What is it that is powering that entire processes in a body, which finally is making this body work, right? That we would say is the fuel in the car. Okay. Just like you have the fuel in the car, we have the pranamaya kosha, which is doing it. But what is making that pranamaya do it is this sentiency principle or this awareness. And then fortitude, fortidhritihi, etat kshetram samasena. Okay. So he's just putting it very, very simply. He says, okay, in brief, I'm telling you, samasa, okay, and savikaram udahritam. So with the modifications has been illustrated here. So these are just the qualities in a very basic form. He's saying is the aspect which this entire body with its 24 thing is going through here. So let me go back to that table here. So on one hand, so verse number 6 covers this entire 24 things out here. And then verse number 7 is talking about the qualities which this body is going through in verse number 7. Okay. So this is what we kind of covered today, kind of in detail about the verse 6 and 7. But to understand this is where now we are getting into what are the qualities that we need within ourselves in order to understand how these rishis have broken this down. So those are the qualities which we'll be discussing from the shlokas from 8 onwards, okay? Which we will start with next week, because that is a separate topic by itself. But I'll open it up for any kind of questions if you have. And let's see. Yeah, go ahead, Geeta.
No, isn't in this particular one, verse 7, the desire, hatred, joy, sorrow are all different kinds of emotions, different qualities, I could say. I don't know what. Why is it connected to Kshetra?
Because where else would you connect it to? Because the minute you have this kshetra with this manas, buddhi, ahankara,
That I understand. That I understand. But why is this needed to explain?
because it is discussing about the functioning of the body. How else is this sanghata, this entire physical body, when it's functioning in this individual body, when it's functioning in the composite kshetra, what as much as the legs and the hands and the eyes and everything are acting in this world, doing various actions, what are the what is it going through? What how I mean,
Only
what
the
is the
mind
quality of the actions? What is the quality of all those actions that the physical body is going through?
Hari Om. So can we
Yes,
say, because it can be only related to Kshetram, because Kshetrakam is the inner body, the consciousness. So we
correct.
cannot, because the inner body doesn't destroy, whereas the Kshetram, the body, destroyed. So all these emotions, the qualities and everything are we are relating to Kshetra. Is that correct?
Correct, correct. So
Okay.
there are only two things, Kshetra and Kshetrajna.
Yes.
And Kshetrajna is unchanging,
Yes.
whereas Kshetra is changing.
Mhm.
Correct.
So when we look at what is changing, only these are the qualities which makes this body change,
Okay.
you know.
Now it is clear. Yeah. Okay.
Whereas Kshetrajna is pure. So when it is pure, it cannot have any kind of mala or dirt, we say, or any kind of taint, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and any kind of a taint comes only when I have desire, hatred, and anything which I go through ups and downs. So joy and sorrow can be considered as ups and downs of various things in our life. And what is it that drives joy and sorrow is our desire.
Mhm.
And think about it that way. I mean, here maybe the words are too simplified. Maybe that is why there's this confusion, because anything that drives our actions is desire. Okay, thoughts actually are the ones which drive it, but the precursor to a thought is a desire, and a precursor to a desire is a vasana. Okay, so vasanas are the ones which are driving it. And here, dvesha, instead of thinking about it as hatred, we can think about it as dvesha is anything that brings about a sense of separateness. Like, you know, Geeta, you and me are separate from each other. The minute I think about you and me as separate, then knowingly or unknowingly, there can be a competitive spirit that can come about. And the minute the competitive spirit comes about, there is a sense of um, a sense of
Great.
no, hatred is too strong a word.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, but
Separation,
then
sense of separation.
sense of
Differentiation.
separation,
Differentiation.
correct.
Okay.
Differentiation, yes, yes.
Hari Om,
And
can you give me
yes,
an example for this quality, sentiency? That's it. Yeah.
so sentiency. So what the shloka is also referring to is sentiency is the example that I gave, which is, you know, the fuel in a car. Okay. What is it that is giving me the word life? We use the word, what is it that's giving me a life of the car? We say the fuel. Fuel,
Yes.
without the fuel, there is no,
Car won't run.
it
Yeah.
is insentient. You know, the whole car is inert
Okay.
or
Okay.
insentient, right? But the fuel is the one which is making it drive. Okay. Just like even within my, I mean, when we say somebody dies, right? How does a person die? Because somehow that pancha pranas, there has been a problem with the pancha pranas, that some part of the process is not worked. So you can take the pancha pranas as the one which is giving sentiency. Okay. But here he is referring to it even a little higher. What is making that Panchapranas work is that consciousness principle or Chetana, you know. So here, Chetana, awareness, consciousness, all these are synonymous. Okay. And
So
he is,
consciousness,
yeah.
where is mind here? Where does mind come here?
So
With
mind is part
respect
of
to
the,
desire.
no. So that is why he's breaking that kshetra. Mind is part of the kshetra.
Okay.
What is making that, what are the qualities of the mind? What are the qualities of the ego? What are the qualities of that buddhi? Is all this. Okay, iti kshetram. That's why he's saying these are the qualities of that kshetram. And I think the word samasena is kind of thrown that he says, you know, he's just trying to tell us, okay, I'm sure you have a lot of questions about this. I'm just telling you in brief. And he's kind of being a little, what should I say? Not sarcastic. I mean, sarcastic is too strong a word. Samasena is saying, you know,
It's
I'm
very
just telling you
powerful,
brief
right?
because, yes, the word Samasena is very brief, is very powerful because he's trying to say that if you guys can just get this, guys, you have, you know, you've already understood the entire Vedanta. You know, he's trying to say Samasena, you know, in a very brief form, I'm trying to tell you here. And he has put in a positive quality here too. I mean, a fortitude, dhriti. Okay, now dhriti, we will be analyzing this much more when we come to the 20 values of the 13th chapter. At that time, we'll come to this point, but he's saying, fortitude again, which rests in the antakarna.
So I have a, I don't know whether I'm going to put the question properly. So all this desire, hatred, joy, all those are abstract. Okay. They are connected to, can I say it is connected to mind, whereas the physical body, in turn from mind, it comes to physical body. Can we say that way?
So these qualities are definitely the qualities of the antakarana, which
Correct.
is the mind, body, and the
Correct.
mind,
Correct.
etc. Right.
Right.
But because of that, the physical body does get affected.
That's
No
my
question about it.
Yeah.
Everything is in right there. For example, if I have a desire to have some sweets, and if that desire becomes a habit,
Then the
it
body
affects my
acts.
physical body. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And any kind of, the qualities, like I said, hatred, jealousy, envy, that kama, krodha, moha, lobha, all that again affects the physical body. Yes, the physical body in some form or the other, it affects all our, not just the external physical body, which is apparent, but it affects a lot the inner body, which is our kidneys and the spleen and the pancreas, and everything is also affected by this desire and hatred,
Wow.
if you think about it.
Actually,
Right? I
this
mean,
slokas, this particular 7th verse is really, really powerful and very difficult to understand.
Deep, deep, right.
it is deep. It is deep. Which Lord Krishna is telling us, if you're really, really highly intelligent, we just get it. Samasi, he's just put it in a very brief form and he's left it. But
Yeah.
it is a precursor to, now he's trying to tell us from shlokas 8 onwards. There is 4 or 5 shlokas. He's telling us, focus on these qualities. If you focus on those qualities, like amanitvam, adambitvam, ahimsa, kshanti, arjavam, acharyopasanam, all these qualities he's going to get to it. And he's saying, if you work on those qualities, you will understand all this just like that. Okay. So this is kind of a sort of precursor to what is coming up from shlokas 8 onwards.
Okay.
Always
I mean, up till
because very difficult to understand. So many times since we go through it, it's opening up our mind.
yes, yes.
Yes.
That is why in the beginning itself, when I started off to explain about Purusha, Prakriti, consciousness, and all that, again, this is only to show that these are very high level concepts. No scientific book will ever explain this. And to understand this, first we have to clean our minds itself with those qualities. And when we focus on all those qualities, all these things, it's amazing actually. The more and more and more we keep on reading even the same thing, it
As
the
you,
knowledge
as you
becomes
said,
more.
no scientific books can explain about this. Nobody else can explain clearly and elaborate and very brief than you. I'm telling you. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. For me, I mean, like I said, I do read a lot of different ways in which it is interpreted. I read so many different books, and then I bring in those aspects in here from various. I bring in science also. I do read some of the scientific papers on consciousness. What are they saying, and how that can be related. I, in fact, found some beautiful diagrams which can also be used. There's one, maybe next week, I'm going to try this diagram of ultimately where are we in the pyramid. If you think about it, um, in a pyramid which has got the top part of it, and at what aspect of this pyramid are we with the knowledge that we're learning. Uh, I'm just calling the pyramid of freedom and independence. Today, we are dependent on a lot of things, which again leads us to this desire joy, sorrow, etc. Because we are in that Sanghata or assembly. I was contemplating on whether to put that next week. We can discuss. I'll bring in a little bit of Tattva Bodh also next week, just not too much, but just to bring that aspect of when we discuss how it becomes a gross body. Where did we start with? How did we end up with being the gross body? You know,
Mm, mm.
just to give a little bit of idea, but okay.
What do
So
you
we,
call that icha and all that? What the whole thing? Icha, hatred, icha, dvesha.
Dvesh.
What do you call together? You call it as
They're just qualities of the kshetra.
kshetram. Okay.
Kshetram.
Subtle
Kshetram.
element, right?
No,
Subtle
no,
element,
not
you
subtle
said.
element. No, no, these are qualities. These are actual qualities of our whole
Kshetra.
sanghata, which we are going through, which includes the body, mind, intellect, equipment, the whole upadhi, what it's going through,
So is that
the whole
sangata?
world.
Is that
Huh?
sangata?
So, yeah, sanghata, exactly. That assembly, that is very important.
Sangata.
So,
Okay.
if you want to, I mean, what is driving this entire world of trillions of dollars? If you look at that, the gross, the GDPs and everything, what is driving that is nothing but these four qualities. And these four qualities of desire, hatred, joy, and sorrow, which is balanced with this fortitude. So
So
these
they're all
five things
qualities.
are
Okay.
correct. These are the things which is driving this trillion-dollar economies of the entire world. And that is what the Sanghata is all about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're
Sorry, we are
welcome.
slowing down
No,
your
no,
process.
no,
Sorry.
no, I actually have to thank you for that questions because it makes us think and reflect upon it. And we
No,
want to
unless
make
we
sure that
understand, we cannot move further because this
yes.
sloka is not very powerful. Lot of new terminologies we are trying to, so we should understand ourselves properly.
Correct, correct. And how does it relate to the world? Otherwise, Kshetra and Kshetrajna, it sounds very good, but how is that really related to what I'm doing today? What that part has to be understood. Okay.
Thank you so much.
No, no problem.
Thank you very much.
सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः Harihi Om. Thank you very much. I will stop the recording.
Are you feeling okay?